Next on MLR Weekly, Seattle Seawolves owner Adrien Balfour, John Fitzpatrick of Rugby Morning, Bryan of America's Rugby News, Picks of the Week, courtesy of the Rugby Odds, the Rugby Network, Play of the Week, and the best dang recap in rugby.
Rugby Wrap-Up's MLR Weekly brought to you by Sheehy Auto Stores. It's easy at Sheehy. The Pig and Whistle, New York City, the world's best rugby pub. And Lean and Limber, stretching your way to a healthier lifestyle.
To MLR Weekly as presented by Rugby Wrap-Up. Matt McCarthy in New York City, hoping that you're enjoying your summer and this MLR postseason. Wow, we have a great show to that end. We have Adrien Balfour, the owner of the Seattle Seawolves. We have Bryan of America's Rugby News. We have John Fitzpatrick in his recurring segment, Rugby Morning's Coffee Break. But before we get to them, we have the best rugby recap in history. Let's get to it. In the land of clam chowder, baked beans, and Sam Adams summer ale, the red, white, and blue bowl between the New England Free Jacks and Old Glory DC did not disappoint. Indeed, the visitors, who have given the Free Jacks fits their season, had Massachusettsonians and Zins watching in horror as DC's dynamic scrum half Connor Buckley scored 3 tries. That's a wicked hat trick. But the defending champions showed moxie of their own, rattling off 17 unanswered points. And the boys from Quincy then played defiant defense in a hard-fought, tooth-and-nail battle that saw Woodgee fling his bait gleefully into the crowd at the final horn. Final score, 33-29 FJs, but Old Glory and their fans should hold their heads high after an excellent season. In Houston, Texas, it was cats and dogs. That's right, the Saber Cats and the Jackals, howling and purring and barking and meowing, well, maybe not meowing, in a back-and-forth junkyard brawl that had the hometown crowd on the edge of their seats. After falling behind, the Saber Cats looked to be finding their way, but Tasi whiffed on a squib kick, and the Jackals pounced on the opportunity for a wild, wondrous try. Yet the Cats clawed back again, using 8 of their 9 lives in the process to roar back into the try zone. But that's when the Jackals, despite being down a dog, work with me here, folks, scored the back-breaking try that left pundits everywhere stunned and vomiting on their sports books. Indeed, improbable Dallas, behind heroic Geronimo Gomez Vara, lassoed the moon in Space City and earned a spot to the Western Conference Finals, winning 34-22. Doing anything in the Big Easy this time of the year is, well, anything but easy. And the NOLA Gold figured to have a decided edge over those Windy City Hounds as the teams traded blows in a seesaw first half. And the large New Orleans crowd figured their team would wear down the weather-weary visitors. But that was not the case, as Dylan the Butcher Fawcett, beautiful Billy Meeks, and the no longer forgotten Luke Carty led a second-half Chicago surge to silence the crowd and the Gold in clinical fashion. Final score, Chicago 45, NOLA 21. At Starfire Stadium in Tukwila, Washington, the league's longest rivalry resumed, and it turned out to be another classic. The Seattle Seawolves and San Diego Legion knocked each other silly in the first half, each taking turns holding a lead. But in the second half, the Seawall and the 16th man, that is the Starfire crowd, wore down the Southern Californians behind Mac Mason and J.P. Smith's leadership, Pongo Hakmahaini's opportunistic try, and the grit of Rhino Herbst. The Legion fought to the end, literally, but the scorecard in the ring showed but one winner. Seattle 30, San Diego 28. And that weeping that you hear is from the headquarters at the Rugby Odds, who picked the Seawolves by 3.
Man, we could use a break after that. Let's take our recurring segment, Rugby Morning's Coffee Break, with John Fitzpatrick calling in from Washington, D.C., the District of Columbia. John, welcome back. Great to see you. What do you have for us?
Hey, man, I could use a breather, too, after that Eastern Conference and Western Conference semifinals. How about a doozy of a weekend in the MLR playoffs? Matt, should we start it with New England and D.C.?
I got a better idea. Let's start with New England and D.C.
It's a fantastic idea. How about Connor Buckley and his 3 tries? Unfortunately, OG DC came up just a little bit short. Could not knock off the defending champions. But, Matt, that was a worthy battle between the 1 seed and the 4 seed. Matt, I know you watched that game.
And listen, first off, I'm the one that told you that Buckley needs to score 4 tries for Old Glory to have a chance. And you scoffed and laughed at me. You said he's not even going to play. That's what you said off camera. And I also said that Old Glory might knock them off, but they'd certainly cover the spread. And that's something that you also laughed at and said, no. So anyway, I thought it was a great match. Old Glory, man, they're just right there knocking on the door. And New England, though, they just win. They just keep winning. And they always, now everybody's thinking, oh, maybe Chicago's going to roll them because they might not have seemed impressive or whatever. But every time you write New England off, they win.
Well, it was a back and forth. It was a worthy clash, honestly, between 2 teams when the regular season, the winning side won by 1 point each time. It felt like an Eastern Conference final. It was only the semifinal. So, Matt, let's jump to the other Eastern Conference semifinal. How about the Chicago Hounds? Man, they took it to Nola Gold. I honestly did not see that coming.
I didn't either. Nola seemed to be firing on all cylinders, getting healthy, at home, good crowd. What the Sam Hill happened there? You got to wonder, right? Got to tip your cap to the Hounds. They're peaking at the right time, and it's all around the firing or dismissal or resignation of Sam Harris. Next.
Well, Matt, Chicago got their first win in franchise history in the playoffs, and so did the Dallas Jackals. Matt, you're a bold guy. You're stepping out of the house looking like that. Are the Dallas Jackals now the favorite in the Western Conference?
Say I'm a bald guy or a bold guy? Because you
take it however way you heard it.
I'm a bald guy. And I stepped out of this apartment thinking that the Houston SaberCats were going to handle the Jackals easily. I also thought Nola was going to win. I don't know I don't know what my name is at this point, but you got it. Come on, tip your cap to the Jackals, man. Wow. How about that man, Geronimo Gomez Vara, who was on our fantasy Rutgers team that you all laughed at me for picking him. And how well did he do? He played the game of a lifetime, of lifetimes, of many rugby players combined. So in your face.
How did your fantasy team finish?
Next.
Well, you're speaking to the champion of that league, and I kind of feel like the champs in the Seattle Seawolves, man. We just kind of rolled over the San Diego Legion. We were not bothered. But, man, I got to wonder just what it means now for San Diego. A number of big legends. Will they be stepping off the field for the final time in MLR? Matt Gittel, Nanu, the list goes on.
I think there's going to be significant change in San Diego. Anything else?
Well, Matt, how about the quest for gold? That's right, the Olympics start. USA men's and women's sevens quest for gold. Matt, will either side get the medal stand?
I think the women certainly have a better shot at it. And on the Rugby Odds, we talk about this week. So there's your teaser. Go to the Rugby Odds, and you'll see how we grade Team USA's men and women as per Olympic medals. Next.
Matt, that's all I got. Again, you are a bold guy, and I applaud you.
I'm not sure. Anywho, thank you, John. Thank you very much. On that note, I want to thank John Fitzpatrick. Let's take a break, and we'll come back with Adrien Balfour, owner of the Seattle Seawolves, who are in that Western Conference final, after this.
Digs like a demented mole there.
Need a great price on a new vehicle? Sheehy makes it easy. Easy Price shows you our lowest prices on the Mid-Atlantic's largest selection. Find your best price online or at any of our 31 dealerships.
It's easy at Sheehy. Sheehy.com.
You need your cleats? You need them tomorrow? If you order today by 3 p.m. New York time or noon LA time, they can have them to you tomorrow. Young, old, male, female, if you're playing on turf, if you're playing on grass, if you're playing in the rain, you're playing in the heat, they've got you covered. RugbyNow.com. Go there now. And we are back with Mr. Adrien Balfour, not to be confused with Adrien Beltre, who is another Seattle sports legend in talks, the Baseball Hall of Fame. Welcome back to MLR Weekly, the other Seattle sports legend that is Adrien Balfour.
Hey, thanks, Matt. That's far too complimentary, but yeah, thanks. Good to be here.
All right, so Adrien, are you recovered from that epic defensive stand from like the 69th minute through the 71st minute on your own try line before you guys turned the ball over and basically iced the game?
Yeah, no, that was pretty damn good, and yeah, sort of recovered. I thought like for the first 60 minutes it was kind of going back and forwards as a tussle, and then they started to really grind it out, which was nice. So I think 75 minutes a good play.
And now you have a pathway to the final at home in Seattle, which is exactly what you wanted, wished for, I would imagine. But before we get to that, and I know that you were in D.C. for the Eagles match, and one of those events there was an event that had different cities that were interested in bidding for the 2031 World Cup. Can you walk us through that event and some of the statistics from World Rugby?
Look, it's a great event. It's essentially World Rugby are running a process to select the host cities. And so the different cities that are bidding for contention came and listened to the presentations, connected with different people, and started to make their started the process to actually become hosts. We all met in the halls of Congress. There were a couple of stats that they mentioned from last year's World Cup. They sold 2.4 million tickets across 902,000 spectators. That basically resulted in a net inflow of international visitors to France during the World Cup of 425,000. They actually held sort of 9 fan zones throughout France, and about 1.6 million people actually came to those 9 fan zones, which was pretty impressive, specifically to meet rugby players and talk all things rugby. 98% of international fans who came to France, they came specifically for the World Cup. They had 1.3 billion TV hours of games watched worldwide, and they had 4 billion impressions on social media. So that was a pretty successful, World Cup from a fan engagement perspective, and just everyone just having fun and enjoying rugby. So I thought that was worth sharing. But it was just, to me, it was great to see the event in DC. There was a great sort of collegial atmosphere around the actual game with Scotland, and to see all of the cities come in and say, okay, we want to be part of this thing going forward, and have those powerful stats from France really reinforced the economic impact on each of those cities, and the support that we expect to see coming from the international community going forward.
Yeah, we were at the match again. I thought it was a very successful event. And it bodes well because of that event with all those people from different cities to see what the potential was. Yeah,
I mean, it'll be great to see what happens in November with the series, as the team gets to spend more and more time together and they can kind of bed in. I know, Scott's probably interested in that, really building to that at the moment. But it was a great event, and it certainly wasn't a blowout that people were predicting. It was not a blowout. The score flattered Scotland, in my humble opinion. So it's going to build.
And I'm sure you get this too, but I get this from different people all the time. Like, oh, they lost, but look at how they lost. And so the MLR is helping. And I'm like, yeah, the MLR is helping. That's a damn good Scottish team they just lost to. But, the other side of it is, continuity, familiarity, getting the guys to get more time playing together. Yeah, you could have a group of all-stars from the MLR, and if they're only assembling for 3 hours or 3 days prior to a kickoff versus like a Romania.
And that's kind of my point, right? So we had about 4 or 5 training sessions. That's it. before the Scotland game, 2 training sessions before the Romania game. What's it going to be like if they have 10, 12, 15 training sessions together as a squad going into the November games, and they play repeated international games in the series? So that's kind of where the rubber hits the road, I think, more so than more so than the last 2 games.
All right. So now that we're kind of mixing the MLR and the Team USA, there are different philosophies, even in your ownership group, about what the MLR needs to do for Team USA, or if the MLR needs to do anything for Team USA in terms of foreign slots. What's your opinion on that?
I think Team USA reflects on MLR. You just mentioned it. People are saying, is MLR, what is MLR? How good are we? Does the national team reflect what's going on at the local level? And I think those conversations will always happen. So MLR, the showcase for MLR is the USA national team. If the USA national team does really well, it'll affect us in a positive manner. I'm not sure it affects us in a negative manner if the US team does negative. But we want the US team to be positive and win some games. And actually, more important than winning the games is actually a really entertaining performance, and build that going forward. But US national team does have an impact on MLR, and we want to support it, 150%.
Okay. I'm going to ask you to go back into the crystal ball and tell me what your ideal number of teams come 2031 would be in the MLR, and how many you actually think would be in the MLR.
Well, you want me to start doing wishful thinking, or do you want me to be realistic?
Both. Let's get both. What's the wishful thinking?
I mean, if you had 12 teams in each conference and you had 24 altogether, that'd be pretty darn cool. Yeah, I would like that.
Just keep it as 2 conferences, or maybe make a central conference.
You could. It depends on where the teams come in, but you could easily see a sort of central conference coming out. The Black and Blue League in football.
Yeah.
The central conference. There's a lot of real structure there, so you could easily see that coming together. But about 24 teams would be optimistically where we want to get to. If we got to 16 to 18 teams, would I be happy? Yeah, I'd be happy.
Adrien, you're a competitive guy. You're engaged in your team. You want your team to win all the time, and you're not BSing when you say we should basically win every game. You mean it, because you're competitive and you're putting out a good product. And I know that you don't say we have to win every game. That's ridiculous. But how does this team stack up to your other best teams in the history of the Seawolves?
I think every year we've been building a better and better teams. This year, I would say it's our best team. The difficulty is not whether this is your best team this year versus other years, is how can you get your best players on the field and keep them on the field? So this year we've been suffering from a number of serious injuries. Peter Malcolm, we've had Ricky, we've had, Chuck. A number of our sort of key starting players have gone by the wayside. So then having to develop the other players to come in and stand up in those positions and make sure we get the spine of the team correct has been a work on that we've had to do all season. If you look at our first sort of run, we were 8-1, and then we started falling off the rails a little bit, and that was as the injuries started to rack up, us trying to basically get the players that are standing into those positions to actually form a spine that we can play with. And fair play to them. In the first half of the San Diego game, the last game of the season, our guys really stood up and really showed what they can do. And so we've been building on that during the bye weeks. And you saw the result there against San Diego in the semi, or in the quarter.
Any final thoughts before we let you go, Adrien? And just know the final question is going to be who's going to win on Sunday. But any final points?
Don't ask that. I mean, because of course we're going to win, right? I think Dallas have got a really good team, and they've come through. They beat us on the road, and we narrowly beat them in Starfire during regular play. So they've beaten us already once. I think the sort of Fortress Starfire and our home fans coming out will be good. We're implementing a bunch of new technologies through our mobile app to engage fans, and we're making that available to all the other teams as well. And I think that is going to help us drive engagement and end up driving better attendance at all of the games across the league. We have to prepare correctly, make sure we manage injuries, and hopefully we get that out of the way, and we'll meet whoever we need to meet. We'll meet them in the final down in San Diego.
In San Diego, which that's a great place, great town, great destination city. So if you haven't gotten your tickets yet, get them. And on that note, Adrian, I want to thank you for coming on once again. You're always a great interview and a great person to talk rugby with.
Yeah, thanks, Matt, and really appreciate what you do for rugby in North America.
Thank you,
keep
sir.
up the good work. Yeah,
thank you. Will do.
And now your Major League Rugby Play of the Week, brought to you by the Rugby Network. In the humbling and heavy heat and humidity of New Orleans, Chicago's Billy Meeks scored his team's fourth try in the final seconds of the third quarter, pushing the Hounds' lead to double digits while sucking the energy from fans and the NOLA Gold. Remarkably, it was the first try for Meeks this year. Geronimo Gomez-Vara is a name Houston fans will want to forget. One of the league's best back row players, Gomez-Vara, switched to lock because of team injuries and simply played the game of his life. In the 72nd minute, his team clinging to a 5-point lead and playing a man down, he disrupted the Houston lineout, winning possession for his team at a critical juncture deep in their own end. Short-handed Seattle's counterattack of a tipped Mikey Teo up and under behind a smart Mac Mason squib kick forced San Diego to scramble defensively on their own try line and earned Seattle a match-altering try. And the Rugby Network Play of the Week is Geronimo Gomez-Vara getting his hand on the SaberCats throw-in despite the exhausting heat and pressure cooker of a situation. And here are the Major League Rugby picks of the week, courtesy of the Rugby Odds. Filling in for WWE wrestling god and rugby advocate John Bradshaw Layfield is proxy Steve Lewis, who's working alongside King Gifte Belu.
Dallas is young and hungry, but I do think going up to the northwest is going to come back to bite them a little bit, come back to reality. That being said, I think Dallas covers, even if I believe Seattle wins.
Hey, it's the wrestling god JBL here again, and I got my sore throat. That's why I don't sound right. But slap my ass with jelly and bury me in an anthill. I like Chicago up in Quincy to beat those massholes.
I'm going with Chicago. They're getting red hot or green hot at just the right time. New England have not been completely convincing. They're not in full flow as they were last year. I think Chicago will not only cover that, Chicago will win. They're coming right at the right time.
Be sure to check out the critically acclaimed The Rugby Odds. It's a sports entertainment show that also has insightful opinions and exclusive highlights. Plus, you needn't know anything about anything to enjoy it.
I wouldn't like to be at the bottom of that.
If you're in New York City and want to watch some great rugby, have some great food, and some great times, go to the world's best rugby pub, the Pig and Whistle on West 36th Street. Hey, U.S. fans, you can tune into every match live on Flow Rugby. How do we know that? Because we're on there all the time. This is the Rugby Odds, where an unlikely pundit panel of a wordsmith, a WWE legend, a rugby star, and a supermodel scour the globe, seeking best bets and bad behavior. Are you not entertained? And we're back, and once again, we have the pleasure of welcoming Mr. Bryan Ray of America's Rugby News. And Bryan, how are you?
Well, I'm shaken up after what was a crazy return to action for Major League Rugby. I tell you, wow.
All right. Well, look, let's now forget the past and look what's in front of us. We have, courtesy of the Rugby Odds, the spreads, the early spreads on this week's matchups that are ahead of us. And the first one is New England hosting Chicago in Quincy, Massachusetts. New England -3.
defending champions up against the team on a hot streak, man. Chicago have looked good since they made that change. They just seem to be in sync and they understand their game plan now. So this one is going to be really interesting. I don't really know who to pick. I mean, Jason Patraz, I thought, had a superb game against O'Glory, so he's really the key. I'd like to know if Mitch Jacobson is going to be fit for this one. I think they'll have Martin Sigren available back from Chile. I hope that's the case, which would help them as well. So, maybe that's going to boost their team a bit. I thought their defense was outstanding in that second half against O'Glory, but man, Chicago just looks confident right now. I like Carty's tactical kicking game. Dylan Fawcett is just, blowing fire as he normally does at his ears. Scored another great, line out try with the help of some backs in that last game.
He's also, I don't know if you know this about Dylan Fawcett, but he's also the captain of the Irish tanning team. I don't know if you know that.
So this is a tough one to pick. I'm wearing a Free Jacks hat right now, a bit of a Free Jacks homer, so I think you know where I'm going with this one. I'll take the Free Jacks to win by, I'll say 4 points, so just to edge that spread. So Free Jacks by 4 is my pick.
Okay, then we've got that other match. We've got Seattle hosting your Jackals, Seattle -4.
I tell you what, I've seen a few comments online saying that the Jackals win is a big boost for Seattle, or it was kind of whoever came through that game. I don't think so. I think if you look at the two games that just happened, the team that took a way more damage physically was Seattle. That was a confrontational game. They had to earn that win. I mean, maybe, the last quarter they kind of pulled away, but they had to work to get there, and they certainly
San Diego was pressuring them the whole first half, it seemed.
Yeah, they took some bumps and bruises for sure, and they're already banged up. So this is not an easy task at all. I will say that Dallas is going to have to shift their game plan a little bit. It's a narrow pitch in Starfire. Everybody knows that, so they can't just throw it, sideline to sideline. That probably won't work. So they're going to have to change up their approach a little bit. But again, I'd love to see the Dallas lineup before this one, because if they've got Gala and Boer and Richardson in that lineup, that's a really different story. And let's not forget the first game where Dallas played in Seattle this year. You know what? I kind of think Dallas should have won that. It was a kind of a questionable call right at the end that saved Seattle's bacon.
Before you can go on, you saw Balfour in the green room on the show this week. So just watch your step. You don't want him tripping you when you're walking to go get a cup of coffee.
So this is I think this is going to be a great game. I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's just full of intrigue. I think you have to I think you have to back Seattle on their home turf, just with they've been to the playoffs so many times in this situation. So I kind of give them a little bit of credit on that experience. I think it's going to be a great game.
It's Rocky versus Apollo.
I'll go Seattle by 5.
Yeah, again, and Rocky versus Apollo. That's what this is. And I think Apollo wins, but if you really want to see what my picks are, go to the Rugby Odds, and you'll be able to see that. But on that note, Brian, we're out of time. I wanted to thank you, Mr. Brian Ray of America's Rugby News. You got to check that out. John Fitzpatrick of Rugby Morning, Mr. Adrien Balfour, the owner of the Western Conference combatants, the Seattle Seawolves, and thank you for tuning in. Please check out our other programs, including the Rugby Odds. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Please sign up for our weekly newsletter. And please join our American Red Cross blood donor team.